Yesterday, when I came into town, and before I even saw your streets next door, I saw the Billy Graham, one of their videos. And it reminded me of 2011 when a tornado, actually there's a group of 3 tornadoes, came through southwest Alabama. Went up through Alabama, through Tuscaloosa, and on up through Chattanooga, on up our way, and actually picked up we have a high school right next door. Picked up the roof off one of the buildings on the high school, picked it up, took it across our building where our store is, and landed it down in the middle of the road, which is a 5-lane road in front of our store, and then kept on going, and God spared our store. And after I dealt with the tornado issues in our community, actually one of the tornadoes went up through our mountain, tore up things, and went up in another community in Camp Creek in Greene County and killed a whole mess of people. After we dealt with that, my youngest son and I went down to Tuscaloosa area and worked that area. And one of the ATF agents told me that a man had been picked up in Tuscaloosa, and he is found 70-some miles north as the tornado went. And a car was picked up from Tuscaloosa and found 50-some miles north. And we're the other side of Knoxville, and where Morristown is between Knoxville and Greenville. There's a little town called Morristown, and it just like it rained mail from Tuscaloosa. People found bills and all kinds of, power bills and all kinds of mail going to people in Tuscaloosa. In that, Billy Graham's group, who was down there working that tornado, they identified something that they incorporated over at the Billy Graham Center, which is on Black Mountain. If you go from Knoxville and go over to Asheville, and then from Asheville, as you're going towards Hickory, you go up Black Mountain, and then you drop off. And on Black Mountain, Billy Graham has a center there that they do a lot of training. They got the Billy Graham radio station. And after that tornado in 11, they implemented a new program of where they invite first responders to come. Because they saw in that tornado of 11, people's hearts were open to listen. And so they taught first responders, and we live in the Bible Belt. This is probably called the Bible Belt, is it? And so that's just part of us, who we are. It's in our DNA. And these firefighters and law enforcement and EMS saw that people, and as they worked with people, they prayed with people, and that got to Billy Graham's group, and they started teaching firefighters and first responders there at the Billy Graham Center how to implement Christ out there on situations. This happened last weekend here, and it's very powerful. Hearts are open right now that may not be open. I call it the time of ochre. Who's grown ochre? So if you grow ochre and it's Friday morning and the ochre is about this long, do you pick it? No, it's too short. But you go away for the weekend, you're gone Sabbath and Sunday, and you come back Sunday night, and Monday morning you go out and check your ochre, and it's about this long. It's too long. It's too coarse and too fibrous. Right now, this is perfect for me. Y'all agree? That's perfect ochre right there. We are in the time of ochre. Y'all right now are in the time of ochre with this storm. People are willing to listen to y'all. Take advantage. My daddy taught me cut the hay when the sun shines. You know what I'm talking about? And so that's very important. Preparing the brain for battle. Do y'all believe there's a battle going on? Yes. There is. There's a battle between right and wrong, between God and Satan. Last year I worked a CPR. This fella died. It wasn't late. It was probably around 10-something at night. And He had a heart attack in bed. Younger than me. And we went, and unfortunately, they were trying to do CPR in the bed, and as y'all know, that's not effective. By the time we got there, we're in the mountains. It was too late. We tried. We worked him, put him on the floor, worked him. By the time the ambulance got there and put everything, it was just too late. So I went to the lady, and I said, "Ma'am, is there any church that I can get a hold of for you, or any preacher?" She says, "We don't do church." She doesn't move in. She wasn't from around there. Or as we say, you ain't from around here. Y'all say that here? You ain't from around here. She'd moved in from somewhere up north where they don't do church as much as we do. And nope, we don't do church. Okay. So I continued doing some things, cleaning up. You don't want to leave the mess that you caused. All the supplies and papers and wires and everything that you're using. And so we cleaned it up. And right before I left, I went back to the lady. "Are you sure? Is there anything we can do? Can we contact anybody?" "No." So I start to walk out, and the son walks up to me, and he's in his late 30s. And he says, "Why do bad things happen? Is there an opportunity to talk to this boy? Is there an opportunity to tell him there's a war going on between God and between Satan?" And I explained that war a little bit about to this fellow. And when I finished, and I could tell this is speaking Greek to this boy. And so you try to make it as simple as possible. And he thanked me for explaining why bad things happen. There's a war now that we have to deal with. A little increase last week here for y'all. But let me tell y'all, Daniel 12:1 says, when Michael stands up, it's going to be a time as never before. And we can think about the time of the Reformation. We can think about times in history. I go to Rwanda every once in a while, and I started going in '99. We've done 12 programs there, and it's a 2-week program where we teach lifestyle, and we train people how to do lifestyle. And do you remember listening about Rwanda in '92 on the radio and the TV? I remembered it. It was. Not till I went did I realize what it was like. The conference president, his wife, and 8 children were macheted to death. There's children here, so I can't tell you what happened. I mean, I didn't know people did this to people. It was a slaughter. And what happened was the Hutus, see, in Africa, they've been tribal wars for who knows how many thousand years. And when the Hutus finally decided, we've had enough, do you know what they said? It's time to kill the cockroaches. And that's what they called them. They called the Tutsis cockroaches. And they said, it is time to kill the cockroaches. And so with the machetes that France had provided, isn't it crazy? They went and just slaughtered everybody. Over 1 million people in 100 days. And if President Paul and others hadn't have gone out and come back, they would have killed everybody that was there in Rwanda. And as you go through the Genocide Museum, and the stories after stories, you just go, how did that happen? And I can't even tell you the real stories because there's children here. It's going to be worse than that. It's going to be worse than that. So how do we prepare for battle? And that's what I'd like to talk about today. Battle today and a battle to come. Preparation is important. I go in the school system, and who's ever seen fire prevention in the school? We have less fires today than 44 years ago when I started firefighting. We have less house fires because of 2 reasons. One is because of electrical codes, and the other is when you have the fire department going in the school system. Every year in October, teaching those children. And as those children hear it year after year after year, and then when they have homes, they start practicing that. And over 44 years, we see much less structure fires, home residential fires than we saw then, because according to the United States Fire Administration, what happens in your local town every October during Fire Prevention Month. And we go and we teach simple things like cover your face, stop, drop, and roll. But kids, let me give you a message from the Tennessee Fire Marshal. Do not stop, drop, and roll if your house is on fire and you're not on fire. And kids were doing that. Just get out of the house if you're not on fire. And we then have fun and we spray water with the kids and develop a relationship. Relationships are important. Would you agree? We talked about that earlier. Friendship, evangelism. And then just working with people, developing relationships is so important. And this world is polarizing people where there's not relationships. I let them see my firefighters. They get to know them. They know them, they know them by name. This is my youngest son here. When we go up to a wreck, is that the time to pull out the manual for the Jaws of Life? But wait a minute, guys. You forgot to get the manual. You get the Jaws, I'll get the manual. See. No, we don't have time for that. We got to rip that car open because someone's bleeding inside. And then once we rip it open, then we change hats again. See, yes, we may come up in a big red fire truck, which we would think would have a fire hat on. But as we get off, we don't say, well, wait a minute, the rescue squad's coming. We'll wait them to tear this car up. They're on the other side of the county. No, we get out and we rip that car up. We put the rescue hat on. And then we've ripped that car open, and then there's people bleeding inside. We don't say, well, it's waiting on the ambulance. It's coming from the other side of the county. It takes, it can take 45 minutes for an ambulance to get up on the mountain where we are. No, we use our EMS training. And then we do what we can within the scope we have. There's sometimes I can't even wait for an ambulance. I call in a helicopter and I fly them out before the ambulance even gets there. We got to put on different hats. People say, well, I'm not a doctor. I can't do medical missionary work. Or I'm a preacher. I don't do medical missionary work. You got to wear both hats, y'all. You got to have your preacher hat and you got to have your gospel hat. Your medical missionary hat. You got to have your member Bible worker hat and you got to have your medical missionary hat. So when that person's there and you're talking to them about their heart disease and you're helping that person and they go, why do you go to church on Saturday? That's a good question. I tell you what, my preacher, he's a great guy. Let me give you, oh yeah, he's on vacation for 2 weeks. Well, when he gets back, I'll give him your number. See, the Holy Spirit gives you that desire to say, why do you go to church on Saturday? See, that can be gone in 2 weeks. You then stop and say, that's a good question. Let me show you why I go to church on Saturday or why I believe in Jesus. Do you see why you got to wear both hats? I wear 4 hats or more than that on the fire department. And so I wear wildland mitigation. I got to know all that stuff. I can't say, well, that's one thing. Same here with us. We had it was right before 4th of July. We had a young girl out of Asheville, just got her driver's license. Mom, Dad were in the front seat, daughter's in the back. She wanted to drive from Asheville over to where we are. This is the river that's the most rafted river in the United States, the Pigeon River. And she wanted to drive on over there. They're coming over for the day, Sunday. And she said, Daddy, can I drive? No, it's the interstate. It's too dangerous. So they get off at exit 451, which is the first exit on I-40 in Tennessee. And they get off, Daddy, can I drive? I don't remember when we did that. Okay, this is safe. So he gets out, Mama gets out, he gets in the front seat, Mama gets in the back seat, daughter comes up and gets in the driving seat. So she starts driving down Waterville Road. It's a narrow road, and it drops off on the side. And she's got her driver's license. So front right tire drops off a little bit. And so what do you think she does? She stomps it, turns the wheel to the left, and off into the river. Now, is that a time to start rescue training? No. Unfortunately, we hadn't done rescue training. And what did I do? I stood on the bank as these raft guides did the work for me. Because why? I hadn't been trained, and I had not got the equipment. I couldn't do anything but just stand there and help do rope work or whatever. We now have a very aggressive swiftwater team that can do fabulous what needs to happen. Fortunately, these guys, everybody was out and safe. You got a structure fire. You got the officer just did a 360 around there. Is that the time to learn how to do a house fire? No, we got to have the knowledge prior to. We got to prepare. How to prepare the brain for battle. The first thing we got to look at is we got to look at the fuel that you put in the brain. Very important. How much would you say this car cost? $100,000? $200,000? $8.5 million. Do you think they worry about the fuel that goes in that car? Do they worry about the kind of fuel that goes in that car? Do they put diesel in that car? Do they put low test in that car? No. How about this car? It's a Bugatti. How much you reckon that car cost? Now, $18.9 million. $18.9 million. Now, I'm showing you this because I believe that the human body is worth more than $18.9 million. Would you agree? Yes. They are definitely worried about what goes in that car. Now, here's a car. Let's get more country. This is a little car. Now, you look at this car. It's got 479 horsepower. That's a highfalutin car. This is just an old country car. This fella, he's 70-some years of age, bought this car. It's only got 800 and some horsepower in it from Dodge. It was chipped out everything. Well, this 70-year-old decided it's just not fast enough. So he sends it over to a guy called, well, it's in Randleman, North Carolina, a little place called Level Cross. Anybody know who lives in Level Cross? I figured y'all would get this. He wears a cowboy hat. Mr. Petty. Yeah, Mr. Petty. And Mr. Petty, he sends this car over to Mr. Petty, and he cranks it up to 1,500 horsepower, more than what the Bugatti has. Mr. Petty, and this car only has 300 miles on it. It just wasn't fast enough. And so Mr. Petty totally rebuilds that engine, and he puts NOS in the back, and he puts 2 fuel pumps on it. The fuel lines are 3/4 of an inch. Instead of getting 2-point-something miles to the gallon, Mr. Petty says, you're going to get miles per tank. And he says, you can no longer buy gas at the gas station. It will destroy your engine. He says, you have to go to where? The airport. And you have to have 115 octane for this car. And then there's this car, the S-Class Cabriolet. And here's what the owner's manual says about fuel in this highfalutin car. It says, note, damage caused by wrong fuel. Even small amounts of the wrong fuel could result in damage to the fuel system, the engine, and the emission control system. Never refuel using diesel. You know, you'd think that's just horse sense. But some people ain't got no sense. They don't. Never use diesel. Gasoline with more than 10% ethanol, more than 3% methanol, additives containing metal. If you accidentally refuel with the wrong fuel, do not switch the engine on. One night we came back. I was still in school in college when I started firefighting. I was tired. It was like, I don't know, middle of the night. And we came back and we had different engines. Now I will only have diesel fire trucks. They were looking at a truck just recently. I said, guys, we are not buying a gas burner. I only want diesels, one fuel. And the driver pulls up, fortunately it wasn't me, pulls up to the 2 pumps, tired, pumps in the wrong fuel. Fortunately, he turned the engine off. Fortunately, he identified the problem, and our mechanic had to come out the next morning and take that tank off and take all that fuel out. If you accidentally refuel with the wrong fuel, do not switch the engine on. Even small amounts of the wrong fuel could result in damage to the fuel system, the engine, and the repair costs are high. If we put the wrong fuel in our bodies, could that cause damage to the body? Can the repair cost be high? And I show you these vehicles because I do believe that the human body is far more valuable than a Bugatti. Would you agree? Yes. The brain is the organ and instrument of the mind and controls the whole body. And in order for the other parts of the system to be healthy, the brain must be healthy. In order for the brain to be healthy, the blood must be pure by correct habits of eating and drinking. The blood is kept pure. The brain will be properly nourished. This is physiology, y'all. I used to wonder which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Well, we know in creation the chicken comes first. But in health-wise, I know that you can do things that tear up the stomach and then your brain has problems. And you can do things that mess with your brain and then your stomach has problems. What comes first? Well, this is right from who? The Creator, the guy who made it. And here's what he says. Before you repair the body, you first have to fix the brain. And in order to fix the brain, you must have pure blood. And then how do you have pure blood? What do you stick in the mouth? What are you eating and drinking? If you're putting a Twinkie in there, you got Twinkie blood. If you got Twinkie blood, you've got a Twinkie brain. You see how simple it is? And then to our text this morning. See, God could have just said, whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Would that not have covered everything? But God loves us. And he says, whether therefore ye eat or drink. Kind of like, is there a commandment that he kind of at the very beginning gave us an extra tip? Remember? Because people are going to forget it. Well, this one here, he says, whatever you eat and whatever you drink is important. I'm going to be reading a lot from Harvard University and Mayo Clinic this morning and looking at the science on how to improve the brain function in order that we can deal with what? A war, a battle. Think about it. Your brain's always on. It takes care of your thoughts and movements, your breathing, your heartbeat, your senses. It works hard 24/7, even while you're asleep. This means your brain requires a constant supply of fuel, even when we're asleep. That fuel comes from the food you eat. So if you eat a late night, what ice cream do y'all use here? What is it? What brand? Blue Bunny. Blue Bunny. That's the one they use in Texas. Well, we use Brahms. And many nights, Mary Lou and I sit up and watch the 8 o'clock news, and we take out a good part of half a gallon ice cream. Well, we got the cider. We didn't sleep as good when we ate that ice cream for a long time. Testing 1, 2. We're working. All right. So that Briars thing was a long time ago, y'all. Like an expensive car, according to Harvard University, your brain functions best when it gets only premium fuel. Eating high-quality fuels that contain lots of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants nourishes the brain and protects it from oxidative stress, the waste, free radicals produced when the body uses oxygen, which can damage cells. Unfortunately, just like an expensive car, your brain can be damaged if you ingest anything other than premium fuel. So if this fella went to Weigel's or whatever gas station y'all have, Texaco, and puts other than that 115 octane, it's going to damage that vehicle. our body just one time, it's going to damage it, according to Harvard. Unfortunately, just like an expensive car, if your brain can be damaged if you ingest anything other than premium fuel. If substances from low premium fuel, like what you get from processed or refined foods, gets to the brain, this is interesting. It has little ability to get rid of them. So when you eat that Twinkie and it goes into the blood and it goes to the brain, and you got a Twinkie brain, the brain has a hard time getting rid of the waste from that Twinkie. Isn't that amazing? That's Harvard. That's not the community college here. This is Harvard. Diets high in refined sugars, for example, are harmful to the brain. In addition to worsening your body's regulation of insulin, they also promote inflammation and oxidative stress. Do people have inflammation today? Yes, they do. According to Harvard, the number one cause of inflammation is processed food. Multiple studies have found a correlation between a diet high in refined sugar and impaired brain function, and even a worsening of symptoms of mood disorders such as depression. As we look at our children who have issues with ADD and have whatever letters you want to put on there, are they eating a lot of sugar? Could that possibly be the root cause? It makes sense. Even if your brain is deprived of good quality nutrition, or if free radicals or damaging inflammatory cells are circulating within the brain's enclosed space, further contributing to brain tissue issue, consequences are to be what? Expected. If I come over and pinch you, is it to be expected it's going to hurt? Yeah. And Harvard says if you eat the wrong food, it's expected it's going to affect your brain negatively. It's just horse sense. What's interesting is that for many years, the medical field did not fully acknowledge the connection between mood and food, according to Harvard. Today, fortunately, the field of nutrition psychiatry is finding there are many consequences and correlations between not only what you eat, how you feel, and how you ultimately behave, but also the kinds of bacteria that lives in your gut. And we can talk about gut biome all weekend. That's huge. Everybody ever ridden a steam train? Could you put toilet paper in there and it make it up the mountain? No. Did you know even coal has different BTUs? The coal out of Kentucky and West Virginia and Tennessee has a higher BTU. It's the better coal to put in a steam train than the coal in South Dakota. South Dakota's coal doesn't have the same BTUs that our coal has in Appalachia. You've got to have that good quality BTU coal. The food that you eat, if you're eating toilet paper for food, processed foods, you know, when I get people to come in to see me and they're plus 400, I can pretty well tell you what they're going to tell me they're eating. It's going to be soft drinks. It's going to be pizza. It's going to be hamburgers. It's going to be hot dogs. It's going to be that type of food. And you're going, but you're 572 pounds. But they're malnourished. They're malnourished because they're not getting the nutrients. They're getting the simple, they're getting the fats, what I want to call it. I'll think of it in a minute. So what's good for the brain? Number one food for the brain. Anybody know what the number one food for the brain is? What? Food. Even though now water falls within nutrition. A food that we eat. Nuts are good, but what is the number one? Anybody? Avocados. That is the number one brain food, we're told. Beets, blueberries, broccoli, celery, green leafy vegetables, rosemary, turmeric, potatoes, asparagus. Walnuts are the top of the nuts. WHO and CDC identify the second major key for the body to run well, the brain to function well. Psychology Today. Who's ever read Psychology Today? It's like a medical journal for folks in that field. Psychology Today, a couple years ago, had an article in it I read. Neuroscientists around the globe agree that physical activity is the best medication to manage brain health and throughout one's lifespan. Amazing. Back around 15 years ago, WHO came out, World Health Organization came out, and they asked every physician in the world to prescribe this medication. And if they prescribed this medication and the patients took this medication, it would save at least 4 million lives. I believe if they had taken that medication, it would save more than 4 million lives. And that medication that WHO was talking about was exercise. They called it medication. Exercise improves the structure, function, and connectivity of your brain. There are many reasons that exercise is good for your brain. These include increases blood flow. Perfect health is perfect. What are we told in inspiration? Perfect circulation. That's right. Perfect health is perfect circulation. Increased blood flow, perfusion, vascular flow, which improves cerebral vascular health. The release of neurotropic factors like BDNF, which stimulates the growth of new neurons, and the benefits of glucose and lipid metabolism, which bring nourishment to the brain. People who regularly perform aerobic exercise, such as running, jogging, brisk walking, swimming, cycling. I like rebounding. Tremendous tool to use, rebounding. Have greater scores on neuropsychological functions and performance tests that measure certain cognitive functions, such as attentional control, inhibitory control, cognitive flexibility, working memory, declarative memory, spatial memory, and information processing speed. What are we talking about this morning? Are we talking about how to improve processing speed of the brain just to have a good brain function? What are we talking about? Preparing the brain for battle. This is a serious matter, y'all. It's life or death. Is your information processing speed important for this battle? Is Satan good at setting something out and saying, this would be good? Does he do that? Do you need to have good processing speed to know, no, I shouldn't do that? Do you need that? Have you ever been just plumb tired and you just don't process things as fast? Well, there's a number of things can cause that to happen, and Satan can get you when your brain's not working well. Is that true? And so we need good information processing speed. The transient effect of exercise on cognition include improvement in most executive functions like attention, working memory, cognitive flexibility, inhibitory control, problem solving, and decision making. Is that important when Satan sets something in front of you and says, you want to try this? Do we need to have good problem solving? Do we need to have good decision making? We do. And information processing speed for a period of up to 2 hours. Who's still in school? Y'all still in school? Would you like to get good grades? Well, they have found that if you exercise, and for 2 hours after you exercise, your processing speed significantly increases. So you have better recall. And so before a test, go out if you can, do some exercising, and then take that test within that 2-hour period, and that can help you. Let's look at another issue. Our brains depend on proper hydration to function optimally. Brain cells require a delicate balance between water and various elements to operate, and when you lose too much water, that balance is disrupted and your brain cells lose efficiency. Years of research have found that when we are parched, we have more difficulty keeping our attention focused. Dehydration can impair short-term memory function and the recall of long-term memory. Is that an issue when Satan goes, we need long-term memory of what we've read in the Bible? Yes? Yes. Or short-term memory of what we read this morning. The ability to perform mental arithmetic, like calculating whether or not you'll be late for work if you hit the snooze button for another 15 minutes, is compromised when your fluids are low. Psychology Today. The effect of dehydration on the brain function depends on the severity of dehydration. Mild dehydration may adversely affect, according to Psych Central, mood, energy level, and ability to concentrate. Could it be that our kids in school just need a little water maybe? And where they're bouncing off the walls, they may be drinking the wrong stuff. I had a guy come in with diabetes. And as I mentioned earlier, diabetes is easier to reverse than toenail fungus. Diabetes is easy to reverse. And he comes in, and we're sitting down doing a history, and I said, what do you drink? How much water do you drink? I don't do water. Why don't you do water? He goes, I don't like the taste of it. I said, so what do you do? He said, I drink Mountain Dew. I said, well, how much dew do you do? And he goes, 3 liters a day. And as you look at the amount of soft drinks that kids drink today, that people, when we were here, in 1969, Tennessee was the 4th healthiest state in the United States. Did you know that? In 2009, we were the 4th unhealthiest state. And when Nashville looked at that, they found number one cause was the food that we ate changed. Number 2, what we drank was different. I mean, remember when we were kids, the little soft drinks? There were those little small bottles. And then now kids drink the 48 ounce. You can get multiples at this, So number 1 was food. Number 2 was drink. Number 3 was exercise. Number 4 was breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is huge on that baby's health as it becomes an adult. Huge. I get girls that come in, they come in maybe for croup or colic, and I'll say, are you breastfeeding? No. Why? That's gross. My girlfriends aren't doing that. It's huge. There's a reason God made that happen. Severe or prolonged dehydration may cause serious cognitive impairment, delirium, permanent brain damage, or even death, according to Mayo Clinic. And the question is, how much water do we need to have? University of California, University of California at Davis, found it takes a half a gallon, 2 quarts, 4 water bottles to run. Where is he? I'm looking for that little fella. Where's our little 5-year-old boy? That's what it takes to run him. Now, are we bigger than he is? So from 5 years old to 128 pounds is that half gallon to sit on the couch. But if you're active, you need more than that half gallon if you're under 128 pounds. If you're more than 120 pounds, it's body weight divided by 2, that many ounces, unless you're just real big. And there's another formula, but everybody in here, it's body weight divided by 2, but that's to sit on the couch. You need more if you're active. But then if you drink more than, there's a guy who's friends with Einstein. He was another physicist, genius guy, and he found that if you drink more than 2 to 3 ounces at a given time, it goes into free flow. So if I take this glass of water, and let's say it's 8 ounces, and I just chug it down, how much am I going to absorb? 2 to 3 ounces. How much is just going to go right out through the bladder and urinate off? 5 to 6 ounces. You cannot count it. So if I just down this 8 ounces, and I want to count this for my daily water, how much can I count? 2 to 3 ounces. Now, first thing in the morning, it's good to drink a quart of water that's warm, that has lemon juice, and that's going to clean out the urinary tract. But you don't count that water because that's just free flow. A mere 2% drop in body water can trigger fuzzy short-term memory, trouble with basic math, difficulty focusing on the computer screen or on a printed page. Batman Jotty, who's ever read Batman Jotty? Batman Jotty is probably the expert. He's dead now, but he was probably the expert in water. Physician, did a lot of research in water. Who's read the book, Your Body's Many Cries for Water? Excellent book, isn't it? Excellent book. I went, y'all are very fortunate to have a church library. There's a lot of churches I go to that don't have one. That's a good book to put in your library as your training program for medical missionary work, to get that book and read it and check it out. Every function inside the body is regulated by and depends on water. Water must be available to carry vital elements, oxygen, hormones, chemical messengers to all parts of the body. See, when I took nutrition in school, I took a bunch of nutrition classes, and every time we learned in nutrition that water is the train car that carries the nutrients to the cell. If you're dehydrated, even though you're eating the food, you're not properly transporting that food to other parts of the body effectively if you don't have adequate hydration, because the water is the train car that carries those nutrients throughout the body. Without sufficient water to wet all parts equally, some more remote parts of the body will not receive the vital elements that water supplies. Remember, it's the train car. So your distal areas, your hands, your feet, and those more distal areas, you're not going to have adequate hydration to those areas. What is an issue that we have that could, in our distal areas, that could be a problem? Neuropathy, sunshine. Vitamin D boosts cognitive acceleration. In a study led by scientists in the University of Manchester in England, they looked at vitamin D levels and cognitive performance in more than 3,100 men aged 40 to 79 in 8 different countries across Europe. The data showed that those people with lower vitamin D levels exhibited slower cognitive processing speed. Do you know your vitamin D level? Well, Walt, I take 5,000 milligrams a day. 5,000 IUs a day. I work outside. I had this lady come in. She's Caucasian. Does that tell us something? When I went to Africa last time, I took a doctor out of South Georgia, Dr. Irvin Davis. He's a black guy. And he told the African doctors, he said, hey, guys, we have sunglasses on our skin. It takes 6 times more exposure for us than it does Walt to get the same amount of vitamin D. So this lady is Caucasian. So that tells you that she should be getting it pretty good. She works in landscaping year-round, outside. She takes 5,000 IUs a day, and her vitamin D level when she comes in is 12. That's super low. So we go to 5,000 twice a day. We did that for 3 months. It only went to 17. And then I called a buddy of mine in D.C., a surgeon that we used to work together, and he said, well, go to 20,000 twice a day. So we did that for 3 months. It only went to 24. See, it's not how much you take a day. She was also deficient in vitamin D. When we pumped up her vitamin D to bowel tolerance, it went to 97. You need K2. You need magnesium. It's not just taking 5,000 IUs a day. It's not just being outside in the sun. You've got to know. How do you know? You check your blood. Vitamin D deficiency is a current epidemic in our society, affecting 90% of the world's population. According to vitamin D expert Michael Hollick, we estimate that vitamin D deficiency is the most common medical condition in the world. It is clear that most people are not getting enough healthy sun exposure, and part of that's also nutrition. Vitamin D deficiency increases brain degenerative processes. This is a really cool study. Look at this, guys. A study published in the Archives of Internal Medicine showed that those who are classified as deficient in vitamin D were 42% more likely to have cognitive impairment. Meanwhile, those classified as severely deficient were 394% more likely to have cognitive impairment. Does your vitamin D, can your vitamin D blood level affect how well you respond to Satan saying, you need to do this? Absolutely it can. Serotonin brain function. Serotonin is an important chemical and neurotransmitter in the human body. It is believed to help regulate mood and social behavior, appetite, digestion, sleep, memory, depression. How do we get serotonin? Well, you eat your flaxseed first thing in the morning, which has tryptophan in it. And you grind it and eat it within 15 minutes. And then you go outside and sunshine comes through your eye and it stimulates the pineal gland to convert the tryptophan into serotonin. If you have sunglasses on or reading glasses that change, that ain't going to happen. Then, so that gets your serotonin. Then what happens is if you don't eat a big supper and if you go to bed when it gets dark, the pineal gland converts the serotonin into melatonin. And that helps you sleep. Now, melatonin does not put you to sleep. Melatonin just keeps you asleep. But here's the problem. Let's say you guys have problems with prostate and you get it 5-7 times a night. Or ladies who wake up and you worry about the kids. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And you turn on that white light. When you turn on a light at night, it turns off your melatonin. The only color light that does not turn, well, I'll clarify this because what I'm saying is wrong, but I'll clarify. The only light that you will turn on in your house at night that will not turn off your melatonin to help you have a good night's sleep is red. You want to put a little Christmas bulb in there or something, or a little red flash. I have a little red flashlight. When I wake up, I turn on the red flashlight and I go to the bathroom and I come back because I don't want to turn off my melatonin. But this is really cool. Do you have something you want to ask God when you get to heaven? Well, this is one of them. See, sunshine, if you open the windows, sunshine turns off the melatonin. Well, it wakes you up. But this is cool. Research shows that moonlight does not turn off melatonin. But what is moonlight? Does the moon produce light? It's a reflection of the sunlight. Isn't that cool? Here, direct sunlight turns off melatonin, but the reflection of sunlight doesn't bother it. God is so good, isn't he? Yeah. Serotonin deficiency, mood, selfish behavior, appetite, digestion, sleep, memory, depression. Serotonin deficiency symptoms, poor memory, low mood. Let's go back to mood. What is our mission? What is our mission? To spread the gospel, to point the sin-sick soul to Christ. If you have bad mood, do people want your Jesus? Now, fortunately, y'all live here in Arkansas. I have the opportunity to go somewhere different almost every weekend. And I go places that they're just people mean as a striped snake. They are. I just got back from New York City. I just got back from Seattle. And it was funny. We flew in from New York City into Knoxville. And this poor woman, she gets up, when you're supposed to deplane, everybody waits and they're polite and lets the people in front of you. Well, here she comes rushing down the aisle. And then she turns around and starts yelling at the lady who was sitting by, telling her how bad of a mama she is. And she stopped right by me where she bumped up against people. And I looked up and I said, "Ma'am, you ain't from around here, are you?" She said, "What?" I said, "Ma'am, you're not from around here, are you?" She said, "Why do you ask that?" I said, "People from around here just don't act like that." Sometimes you got to let people know they just ain't right. Fortunately, you live in a place that people are a little nicer. But can mood affect your mission to point the sin-sick soul to Christ? It can. And that mood issue can be affected by, do you have enough serotonin? Did you have your flaxseed this morning, the tryptophan? Did you get the sunshine to make that serotonin? Do you see how important these little laws that God gave us how long ago? 161 years and 3 days ago. Deficiency in sleeping, low self-esteem, anxiety, aggression. People don't want that. You just aren't going to spread the gospel doing that kind of stuff. Making the right decision, temperance. I used to think I was good in this area. I don't do alcohol. I don't do drugs. I don't do tobacco. But there are other things in making the right decision. Could it be the music you're listening to? Could it be TV you're watching? Could it be gaming? I was going from Knoxville to Atlanta. I got in Atlanta and I was going plumb across the U.S. to the coast. There's a guy, I usually sit towards the back of the plane. And there's a guy, I was sitting on the aisle, there's a guy up one row across from me, and he's in his mid-40s, and he's on his little Mac computer gaming. And he gamed all the way across the United States, playing these games that you kill people, cutting their throats and stabbing them and blowing them up and shooting them. He looked like a little 8-year-old bouncing up and down on his seat playing that game. Do people kind of get reality mixed up sometimes? They do. Gaming is not good. Social media, could that affect? It sure can. As we grow and develop, very specific chemical reactions activate and deactivate parts of our genome in strategic times, at strategic times and in specific locations, essentially turning our genes on and off. Epigenetics is a study of these processes and the factors that influence them. See, we have learned that the brain can regenerate. We've learned that nerves can regenerate. And one of the most misdiagnosed diagnoses is you're genetically predisposed. After Katrina, I went down to western part of Mississippi, right on the Pearl River, to help a fire station that was devastated from Katrina, my youngest son and I. And we were sitting there at the fire hall and talking, and I was talking to the assistant fire chief. And my daddy taught me to look at cows. And when you learn to look at cows' eyes and their head and how well they're holding that head up and their gait, you can tell if that cow is sick or not. Well, you can use that same thing on people too. And I was looking at this guy, and you could tell he just wasn't good. And I said, he was assistant chief, and I said, Chief, have you got any health problems? Yeah, he had syndrome X, diabetes and heart disease and obesity and, those things. And I said, would you like to reverse them? Because that's what I do. He said, what do you got to do? And so I started sharing with him. He goes, no, I'm good. I'm good. He says, my doctor said I got Southern Mississippi syndrome. And all I got to do is just go and he'll give me some pills and I can do whatever I want to. And I don't have to change what I eat. I don't have to change my exercise. I don't have to change when I go to sleep at night. Genetically predisposed is one of the most misdiagnosed diagnoses, according to this right here. I've had doctors argue with me till the cows come home that if your granddaddy smoked and he got lung cancer, and your daddy smoked and he got lung cancer, and you smoked and you got lung cancer, you're genetically predisposed. A kindergartner will tell you, buddy, that's because you smoke. It's common sense. And the cool thing about epigenetics, just as nerve cells recuperate, just as brain cells recuperate, our genes will change through epigenetics. And you know what? We talk about the rocks crying out. These universities like MIT are saying if you change these certain different things and the things we're talking about today, your genes will change. You don't have to have heart disease. You don't have to have diabetes. My cholesterol used to be 288 when I worked in regular health care. And the guys told me, Walt, you're genetically predisposed. Look at your daddy. Look at your granddaddy. Well, I decided to try something. And I went total no cholesterol. My cholesterol went from 288 to 104. I was not genetically predisposed. I was East Tennessee predisposed. You know what I'm saying? Do we eat what our parents eat and they ate what their parents ate or have the same lifestyle? Just because they have it doesn't mean we're going to get it. But if we have their behaviors, their lifestyle, there's a good chance we'll get it. But even if we do have those genes, we can change it through changing our behavior. Because I changed my behavior of what my daddy ate and my granddaddy ate. It is the law of the mind that it gradually adapts itself to the subjects upon which it is trained to dwell. And that's very true. Very true. Fresh air. Effects of air pollution on the brain, children's psychological and motor development is negatively affected. Negatively impacts brain white matter, which affects nerve conduction speed. Brain inflammation negatively affects executive function, such as planning and memory. Again, we're still seeing where each one of these items can affect how we deal with that battle. Cognitive impairment, increased behavior problems, crime rates increase. Improvements, improves brain's ability to function, gives clarity to the mind, improves concentration, boosts learning abilities, gives a sense of happiness and well-being by altering brain levels and secretion, serotonin, promotes sleep quality, kills bacteria and viruses in the air. And a lot of people just look at at breathing as issues of pollution. But also how you breathe is important. Do you breathe like a chihuahua? Or do you have diaphragmatic breathing? Who's taking voice? Anybody take voice? Do they teach you diaphragmatic breathing? Anybody taking a wind instrument? Our trumpet player, he's not here today. Does anybody play trumpet? What did you play? Trumpet, okay. Can you hit a high C, a strong high C without diaphragmatic breathing? No, you can't. And so we need to have diaphragm. I remember when I joined the Camerata Singers, the touring choir, my freshman year, he laid us down on the floor, us new people who joined it, and he stuck a book on a song book on our stomach and said, "Go back to the rooms and learn how to breathe where that book goes up and down." Diaphragmatic breathing makes a huge impact. Even with diaphragmatic breathing, we don't totally unload our lungs. But when you breathe like a chihuahua, you're sure not unloading that toxins out of the body. Rest. A sleepy person's brain works harder and accomplishes less. This is University of California, San Diego. A single night of poor sleep is linked to less efficient filtering, meaning one's brain has issues of picking out important or relevant nuggets of information from all the insignificant junk one's senses absorb. Just one night of not getting your sleep can cause this to happen. Is that a chance when Satan can go, "You want to try this?" Yeah. Mayo Clinic finds the following on sleep and brain function. Getting at least 7 hours of quality rest each night is essential for optimal health. We're now learning, Harvard says 7.5. They're flirting with 8. The Breezel-Belloc study, they said 8 to 9. The American Heart Association, just June of 22, has added sleep deprivation as one of the causes of cardiovascular disease. The American Heart Association found that just 2 nights a week, on average, just 2 nights a week, when you don't get 8 hours, when you don't get 7 hours of sleep, can cause hypertension. Is that not big? That is big. Sleep provides the foundation for all daily habits and decisions. Sleep provides the foundation for all daily habits and decisions. Sleep deprivation can negatively affect mood, temperament, as well as one's ability to focus on daily tasks. Lack of sleep influences what and how much we eat. Sleep allows time for the mind and body to recover from a day's work. Deprivation has a propensity to make one feel cranky, short-tempered. When the body and mind are well rested, one is able to respond to life with greater perspective and understanding. This is interesting, coming out of science. Sleep can help boost one's motivation, willpower, and make it easier to fend off what? Temptation. That's coming right out of science. The rocks are crying out. Let's see. Let me just jump through here. I'm stuck on this one. Why is it not going? And the last one I'd like to cover, trusting God. Can anybody tell me where this is? What's the venue? It's in a school. It's in a school building. Every Florida school and administrative building will be required to display "In God We Trust," according to a bill passed by the Florida House on Wednesday. The bill states the phrase must be displayed in a conspicuous place. When Tennessee K through 12 public schools begin classes next month, the national motto "In God We Trust" will be required to be posted everywhere in their schools. That was 2018. In 2008, I started going to the school system and teaching these 8 laws of health. And what I had to do is I had to have the kids pull out their money and say what was on the money. I could not say "In God We Trust." 2 weeks ago, I was in our school. 1 week ago, I was in one of our schools, and the principal came in to see what I was talking about, and I was talking about trusting God. And while he was there, I said, "It's on the wall in his office." He knew he couldn't say anything, but it's a state law. It has to be on everywhere. Arkansas schools to display In God We Trust. You know, it's amazing. When I go to New York and talk about this, when I go to Maine and talk about this, when I go to Washington and talk about this, when I went to Sweden and talked about this, they can't believe it, that it's a law that has to be in the schools. New law in South Dakota now requires all public schools across the state to feature In God We Trust motto display. Kentucky is the latest in the line of states that is requiring the In God We Trust motto in the public schools. It's on our money. It's even on our police cars. New York City, they could not imagine that being on police cars. It's on our fire trucks. That's one of my fire trucks right there. In God We Trust. Here's what I want to ask. It's on our money. It's on our police cars. It's on our fire trucks. But it is on your heart.